Let's talk about Module 1 in COMSC210, C++ programming language. So you can see this module actually is review some fundamental concept you learned from the previous courses about the C++ programming. There are a few reading pages in this module. Each reading pages afterward that will come with a small quizzes, just 1 or 2 questions to review the concept we talk about in the reading pages. So the first one we talk about some you should do or shouldn't do in the coding, and also about the coding alignment and organization. Then we have the console programming to review your file input and output. So the last one we talk about COMSC keyword. I will use 2 recorded lecture videos to talk about those pages. But some information actually they are pretty straightforward. So then I will just leave you for yourself reading. So here in the video, I only focus on something I want you to pay attention. So let's start. So the first one I want to remind you about the code alignment and organization. On the other hand, actually is the code standard for this class I require you to have. In this class, you have your prior experience about the C++ programming. So any IDE you want to use, no matter Visual Studio, Xcode, CodeBlocks, or Cloud9, or Eclipse. So anything, any IDE you want, you can feel free to use that. The most important thing, you need to make sure how to run multiple source file project. Let's talk about a couple requirements I want you to follow for this course. All the assignment or lab exercise, I want you to follow that. The first one is function prototypes. In C++, any function you want to use, you either need to implement the function before the main, or we can have the function prototype before the main. Then the implementation we will do afterward. So in this class, I require you have to using the function prototype. So all the function prototypes you should be listed before your main function. So in this way, I can clear to see what kind of function you implement, what kind of function you want to use. So then here in the main function, I can know what you want to do. So all the function implementation, please include after the main function. The reason is, for this class, most assignment, you will have very long programming. You will have long source file about at least 100 lines or a couple hundred lines. So that's why it's easier. I can see how you want to use those functions with the prototype before the main. Instead of the beginning, I will see your long implementation for each function. So please make sure you will always have a function prototype. Otherwise, couple points will be deducted from your assignment. That's one requirement. Then the second requirement is for your source file, you need to include your programmer information. So this one actually will already show you in the reading pages. So most our assignment, you have 2 files, at least 2 files you need to submit. One is the header file, we implement all the data structure class. Then the second one, CPP file, usually is the driver program to implement how we will run with the main function. So no matter which file you submit, all the source file you submit, you need to identify yourself. So that's one thing is, for example, in your myfile.h, so that's the header file. Then myfile.cpp, that's the CPP file. They both are source file. The beginning, please comment your first name, last name, and with your ID. You need to be displayed, appear in all the source file. Then in your driver program, the beginning in your main function also include your programmer identification. So you can simply just copy these 3 lines. So this one is when I run your program, we will have some output. But since sometimes maybe we will mess up from other classmates' submission. So that's why I can make sure when I run the program and test your program, from the beginning of the output, I have your identification. So here you see you have your programmer name and the ID display. So here the files __ capital files __. This one actually they will display the file you are running for the whole path and the file name. So I want you to follow these rules to identify yourself in all your source files. Okay, so that's what we'll talk about the requirement. So the rest of this video, I will talk about the console programming. I want you to pay attention. For the console programming, a lot of time we need to read from the user input. So if you didn't do that from your prior courses, so here we want you to remind you. Of course, in 110, 165, we use the cin. Then we define a variable. For example, if we want to read the user input for the integer, we cin to the int variable. If we want to read from the user input for the double, we do the cin and assign to the double variable. But this one actually we assume user doesn't make any mistake. But sometimes user always make the mistake, right? So if you are require user to enter integer variable, but accidentally user enter not an integer value, when you do the cin to the int variable, they will make your program crash. So that's a runtime error. So in order to prevent this thing happen, for this course, whenever we ask the user to provide the value, we want you to always read as a string first. Then from the string, we convert to either int or a double value. If we do so, then we can make sure if user accidentally enter the wrong data type, your program won't crash. So that's why here you can see the sample code block. We don't want you to have the int age to assume user will enter the age correctly in the integer format, then the double temperature. Instead, we have a string called buff. So this buff actually we always see in as a string. So then we don't need to worry about user enter something wrong because we always can read the user input as a string. So after you input as a string, right? So if we are expecting the integer, so then we're using the path to convert to the integer. So we use the A to I. So that's A to I is from the CSTD library. They will convert a C string into an integer. So earlier our above is a C++ string. So in order to convert a C++ string to C string, so we do a .c_string. If you didn't see A to I before, you only see S to I or F to I. So you need to be careful. For this class, we use A to I. So why we use A to I? Because one thing is, remember, in case user enters something wrong, A to I, the best thing is, if anything not the format we want, they will assign to the default value. For example, when you ask user to enter the age, right, they accidentally type their name. Can I convert the name become age? No, I cannot. But when they do the A to I, if they find out the data format is incorrect, they will instead to give you to have the runtime error to crash the program. They will make that name you reading to assign the default value. The default value for integer, of course, that's 0. So we will see that's 0. Instead, your program will be hash. So that's one console programming I want you to pay attention. So you will see that's the difference in the console programming. We want to use the A to I to convert a C string to the integer, or A to F. You will have the C string convert to a floating point number. So both they came from CSTD library. So that's one console input we need to be careful. Let's go to the next one about the get line. Yeah, because sometimes if we want to get the user have the whole line we want to read. For example, you see here we ask the user, please enter your first name and the last name. We cannot just use the C into the string, right? Then we need to use the get line. So then we will read the whole line from the C in and assign to a string, including the spaces. So now I want you to see one example from your files from Canvas. Let's go to the Canvas and let me show you. If you go to the Canvas, under the files, you will see we have two folders. The lecture files is all the PowerPoint file I saved in the PDF format. Then we have demo files. So sometimes I have some demo files I want you to download. For example, in Module 1, you will see Example 1. So I want you to open the Example 1 from your IDE and run this program to see what happened. Okay? Remember, anytime you can post a video, I will actually very fast speed to talk about the concept I want to talk about, because I know you can post the video and slow down. So post the video, make sure you download this file and run from the IDE. I want you to see what happened. Okay, so that's example 1, the sample output. So you can see here, we ask the user to enter the day, month, and the year. Then at the end, we ask them to enter the full name. So I believe you try to run, right? Please enter your day of birth. So that's June 22nd, 2008. So then, what's your full name? I believe you did try to enter something, right? But did you see anything happen here? So I want you to see why here we couldn't enter the full name. Right, so you see here, the reason is came from the get line. When you enter the June 06/22/2008, then you do the enter, right? So then from our C-in, we read the above. So that's why the first string we read 06. The second one we read 22. Then the third one we read 2008. So they can convert to date, month, year, no problem. But when we try to get user full name, but here you see you want to do the get line, right? So actually this get line, they will read from your 2008 enter. So this get line actually is read from here. So that's why if you run this program, you will find out actually you have no chance to enter the full name. Because when they display what is your full name, they right away display the result. The reason is sometimes when you mix up with the C-in and get line, you have some new line from the previous input. They are in the buffer pipe there. So then when you use the get line, then you have some problem. So that's why here, how to correct this error? How to correct this error? Can you think about it? Solution. Right, to correct this error between you do the C-in and the get line, right? We need to add one more thing. We call C-in ignore. So this C-in ignore, we need to ignore what? Before we do the get line, we need to ignore the previous new line. So after you are C-in before your get line, we need to do the C-in ignore. So this one C-in ignore, actually this 1000 just mean maybe sometimes you have many new line. So we just put the 1000 at most 1000. Then this 10 actually is the ASCII code for the new line. So that's how we can skip the new line. So either way is fine. So that's why you can correct your example 1 to add the C-in ignore. Then you will see your output is correct.